Here's a piece of the upcoming episode of the Beaver Tales podcast.
I think everything really hit me then of just like, I'm not on the team anymore. And so much of my identity was in this football. And on top of that, I was kind of at the peak of my career. And I had this kind of storybook season last year, the storybook off season. And now all of that is just gone and it's not coming back.
That's just a little bit of this episode, and before we get to the whole conversation, I'm giving a shout out to Kingdom Home. You can't find a better charity than Kingdom Home, which is run by Matt Boyd, former Oregon State pitcher. His wife Ashley also helps operate this house in Uganda. In fact, it's now multiple houses where kids who are in danger of being trafficked can come live, have a safe place, get education at Kingdom Home. If you're already loving what you're hearing, go check out Kingdom Home, their website. The link is in the description. You can learn more and maybe donate if you're willing and capable of doing that. So thanks to Matt and Ashley Boyd, their staff, the house parents there in Uganda, and everyone else helping out with that amazing organization. All right, now on to this episode of the Beaver Tales podcast.
This is the Beaver Tales podcast with Josh Ward, who has covered Oregon State athletics since 2013.
Once again, you've made a solid choice and tuned in to the Beaver Tales podcast. Hello again, everybody. I'm Josh Warden. I talk with former Oregon State student athletes about their highlights at OSU, what they're doing in life now, and how they transitioned away from college athletics. And one of the stories I've been most looking forward to is hearing from Gabe Ovgard. In fact, the very second episode of this podcast a couple months ago with Alexis Cerna, one of the first guys he recommended of, you've got to get this football player on, was Gabe Ovgard. Now, I already kind of knew Gabe a little bit and knew he'd be a good guy to reach out to, and I was planning on it, but of course it helps to get a recommendation from a guy like Alexis Cerna. Now, Gabe comes from Southern Oregon, Klamath Falls, a walk-on for 2 years with the Oregon State football team before earning a scholarship in March of 2016. He came as a wide receiver on the scout team, but in 2015, he was forced into action on defense, started 2 games at safety, recording 1 interception at Cal against future first overall draft pick Jared Goff, now the LA Rams starting QB. Now, I was down in Berkeley for that 2015 game when Oregon State played Cal and Gabe had his first career interception. I was doing the radio broadcast for KBVR, which is the student radio station. I remember calling that play, and I even went back and found the clip of Gabe making that interception. Now, my play-by-play was not very good at that point, so forgive the less than stellar broadcasting skills, but here was my call of Gabe Ovgard's interception 5 years ago.
2nd and 6 from Oregon State's 48-yard line. Watson in motion. It's a wheel route. It's picked off at the 30-yard line. Nice interception for Oregon State on the wheel route. It's Gabe Ovgard. What a play by the redshirt freshman. Reads Goff's eyes and picks off that pass intended for Bryce Treggs, and Gabe Ovgard gets his first career pick.
Well, there you go. There was the interception Gabe Ovgard had near the end of the 2015 season. But shortly after, in the timeline of Gabe Ovgard's career, he actually had to retire from football less than a year later. He sustained 4 concussions within a year, but stuck around in Corvallis for a while and stayed involved with Oregon State athletics through the Beyond Football program. He eventually went overseas to study international business at the Vienna University of Economics and Business. Gabe is 24 years old now. He's married, and he works full-time for Nike. So we touch on all of those things and his pretty stark contrast of I'm a football player and I'm getting significant playing time to I'm a retired football player and I'm dealing with concussions. That's a very different stage of life to be in, and it happened very quickly for Gabe. So we talk about what that was like and how he handled the ups and downs of all of that part of his story. So let's jump right in with former Oregon State football player and a guy who's more than just a football player, as you'll hear. Here is Gabe Ovgard. It's really fun to talk with people from Southern Oregon, as I've gotten to know a few people and see what that means to come out of Medford or Ashland or whatever it may be for each individual. But for you to represent both the Triad School, going there for 3 years, and then Klamath Union, and to be able to, say you're from Southern Oregon, represent that part of this great state. What did that mean for you to go up to Oregon State and be in Corvallis and represent them, not just athletically, but just as a person?
Yeah, it meant the world to me. I grew up hearing about Mike Keck and Alex Stork and all these guys that came before me and made it big, but there's not many of those stories. And so I think so many Klamath kids' dream is to be the one, is to be the kid that makes it out, that makes it Division I, plays for Oregon State or U of O. And so I had envisioned myself in a Beavers uniform for as long as I can remember, and so for it to actually happen, it still kind of is surreal to me that I even had that opportunity. And yeah, I mean, it meant the world to me to just represent Klamath Falls, represent Southern Oregon.
How big was being a 1A school? How big was Tryout? How many students actually went there in total?
I believe when I was there, they had 65 total kids in the high school, and I think my class had 18.
Gosh, you must have been a pretty big fish in a small pond, athletic-wise.
Yeah, there was some really good athletes actually. They came through Triad. I think we were definitely one of the best 1A athletic programs in the state, and yeah, I mean we had some legit athletes there, but yeah.
You'd be surprised, actually. I mean, you wouldn't be surprised. People would be surprised, and I have been impressed with some of the guys. I mean, let's see, I think Oakland might be a 2A school, but to see like what Derrick Henry did, and I'm sure there are other names. Real quick interruption to say, I'm really stupid. Derrick Henry was the running back. He used to play for Alabama. Now he plays for the Tennessee Titans. I meant to say David Henry, who was a former Oregon State football player and wrestler who's from Umpqua, Oregon. He went to Oakland High School. Gabe was nice and didn't correct me, but I meant to say David Henry, not the Alabama running back. Okay, back to the conversation. You see these guys come out and you're like, oh, okay, just because there's 50, 100 people at the school doesn't mean there's a few pretty bright gems in there.
Yeah, absolutely. There are definitely some diamonds in the rough down there in those smaller schools. So
I had Dustin Stanton on this podcast a couple of months ago, and there's one story I wanted to revisit with you that kind of loosely involves him. This is from the spring practice of 2016. You're just recovering from mono at this point, so that's one thing. You're coming back, and you notice, I remember talking with you about how Derek Odom was kind of giving you the eye, and Devin Chappelle's kind of smiling at you, and people are treating you weird. And then Dustin Stanton stands up and he's reading something in front of the practice, and it was all kind of surreal. You don't really know what's happening, and then the news hits you. So tell me your recollection of what that news was and how that day felt for you in March of 2016.
Yeah, man, gotta go back a little bit there. Yeah, I actually remember waking up that morning and I was like, oh man, here we go. I think it was a Monday. And an early morning workout, I was like, man, I don't know if I have it in me today. So definitely wasn't super motivated waking up, but went to the workout, was sitting there, and then they were playing a game. And, as a walk, I talked to my friend Drew Kell about this a lot. It was kind of like every day, even before it was warranted, when I was a red shirt and I hadn't done anything for the program. Like every day you're wondering, am I going to get a scholarship today? And so whenever those games came up, you're like, you've seen the ESPN videos. You're like, oh, maybe this is it. And so I think I had that thought at the time of like, yeah, it might be me. But I had also gone through enough of those without getting a scholarship that I think I was starting to kind of give up hope on that front. And so, yeah, sure enough, they went up there. Dustin, they had me come up, which I felt like I was never involved in those games. And so that was another thing. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like, I feel like I never get chosen for these. And then, yeah, Dustin starts reading the thing and he's like, is this right? And I'm like my heart starts pounding, and like getting the chills a little bit because I'm like, no way. And then he says 17 full ride scholarship for Gabe Ovgard. And then it was just like mountaintop moment, trying not to cry in front of everyone, but the team surrounded me, such an awesome group of guys, and just celebrated me, which meant the world. So
how much did that change for you personally, as realizing, oh my gosh, I got a scholarship? Financially, if you ever consider like I might have to transfer, go somewhere smaller, or like, if you were thinking about that, I mean, how much did that scholarship impact you tangibly?
Oh, it was huge. I mean, I don't come from a lot of money, so everything that I was paying for up there was pretty much me paying for. My parents helped where they could, but I had a lot of academic scholarships, which was a huge blessing. And so that kind of sustained me those first 2 years, but that was nearing the end of my sophomore year, and the scholarships were kind of expiring and things were running out. And I was in a pinch, and it was like, if I don't get this scholarship, I don't know if I'll be coming back next season. And so in the nick of time, I got rescued financially and was able to stay. And so that scholarship was huge. It kept me at Oregon State, I think. So
the crazy thing is, once you got that scholarship, the expectation was that you'd have, at that point, I guess, still 3 years of eligibility left. So you could have plenty more good days competing for playing time. You had a pretty good season, starting a couple games the previous fall leading into getting that scholarship. And even though you got that scholarship in 2016, you never again played college football for Oregon State or for any school. So take me through that experience the rest of the offseason and into fall camp of 2016 of what happened and how you handled it personally.
Yeah, no, that was a rough winter from the start. I ended the season getting a concussion in the Civil War, this in-state rivalry.
Right. Yep.
And so that was, I think, two drives into the game, and so that was pretty crushing for me to not be able to finish that game out. It was a blessing that I got a start in it and all that, dream come true, but definitely wanted to finish it out. And so that was kind of the start of my off season. And then I got kind of a myriad of weird ailments. I got pink eye, I got an ear infection, all these different things. And then finally mono hit. And that took me out for about a month. And then spring ball came around and I was feeling good, feeling better. And I was just super excited to get after it. I was on scholarship now. And so it had a different feel to it. I was on the depth chart for the first time. I was in the 2 deep and getting all the reps in spring ball. And so I was stoked. And then a couple of days into practice, maybe first day of full pads, Kyle White is running down the sideline, and I decided to hit him high, kind of lead my feet, go for the Superman tackle high on the shoulders, and hit my head right against it, bent my neck weird, fell down, and sure enough, got a concussion. And so that was it for spring ball. That was a concussion in November and then a concussion in whatever it was, April, March at the time. And so, and I knew that I had one more after that. And even with that, I wasn't super comfortable because the concussions were starting to take a toll, and I was pretty low. I was struggling with some depression and anxiety during the time. And so that was another big blow. And then summer came and went, got in great shape and really was ready for the season. And I remember in fall camp in Bend, being out on the field the first day of full pads, and there was just a eeriness and a fear inside me that I'd never felt. I'd always been pretty fearless on the football field, and for the first time I had this kind of gripping fear, just knowing that one slip up and I'm done. And sure enough, something happened, and I look back and I don't even know what hit did it, but I got a concussion in fall camp, and that was that. And they gave me the opportunity to keep playing. They said, you can sit out a year, you won't get a red shirt, but you'll sit out a year and come back. And I was like, I've gotten a concussion, at least one concussion every football season since freshman year of high school. So I think it's time to call it. So
I know what you mean. I mean, that's not an easy decision for anyone to make, but I think looking back on it, you may already feel and will feel that was the right choice for a couple of big reasons. When you were going through the worst of it, of how much it was affecting you as a person, with your mental health, with physical health, how much of that do you think was the existential, like, I'm going through a rough time because I realize football might be on the edge and it's just a logical realization, or more internal, like chemical, my brain is going through trauma and my mental health is going up and down just because of my brain physically is having difficulty? Or maybe it's a little bit of both. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a little bit of both. And just, the pressures of being a collegiate athlete, being a walk-on is not easy. And I know we talk about the life of a college athlete and how hard it is. But I think you talk to any walk-on, and I think it's, not taken away from anyone else. I think it's a lot harder for us. We go through a lot there, and so yeah, just knowing that financially I was on the edge, physically I was on the edge, and then those rough Corvallis winters with the rain constantly, and then the mixture of concussions and mono and all the physical stuff going on. I think it was kind of the perfect storm.
So once you finally did say, I'm done, I'm making that choice, no more football for me, there are a couple things that may have helped. For one, correct me if I'm wrong, but you did get to keep the scholarship, even though you're not on the roster, but they'll honor the financial part of that agreement. So you got that for the rest of your academic career. So that's big. And you were kind of involved in the football program. You're doing the beyond football thing. So, I would see you around the games and you're still interacting with the guys, even if you're not wearing a jersey. So what was that transition like, where you're still in Corvallis, you're taking classes, but you're not a football player? How much did your mental health, emotional health, stability, did it stay the same kind of uneven for a while? Did it take an immediate spike upwards or downwards? Like, what did that happen in the months right after you officially retired?
Yeah, I think the first month was actually the best month. The first month following, I went home to Klamath Falls. I was with my family. I got to go hunting for the first time in a few years and just be in the outdoors. And so I felt really supported then, and that was great. But then when I came back, that's when I started helping with the football team. And then I think everything really, really hit me then, of just like, yeah, I'm not on the team anymore. And so much of my identity was in this football. And on top of that, I was kind of at the peak of my career, and I had this kind of storybook season last year, the storybook off season. And now all of that is just gone, and it's like, it's not coming back. And so being around the football games, I think, was both helpful and detrimental. I haven't come to a conclusion on whether it was good or bad, but I do know that it kept the pain of not playing really close. And so yeah, it was challenging to watch those games that first season, and to be around that, and to see the guys suited up, and then I'm just in my normal clothes and just another guy on the sideline.
In the end, how many concussions would you estimate you got, high school, college, altogether?
Yeah, it's around 11 total, and that's starting from junior high. So it's around 11.
Do you notice to today any lasting effects, any other, I've heard guys talk about slurring of the speech, or kind of you losing your train of thought for a second. Do you notice any impact even to now?
I do. There's days that are worse than others, and I think overall it's improved. But there's definitely days where I have trouble kind of forming sentences and really like articulating thoughts well. And so it can be and then there's just foggy days. There's pressure in my head. I don't get a lot of headaches, which I'm grateful for. But yeah, there's definitely some residual effects of all that.
Sure. Coming back to kind of what you looked at following football. So you get out of that environment, you don't have to worry about the concussions anymore, at least not getting another one, but you're still dealing, at least to a certain degree, with the impact of that physically. What about what you looked to for? You talked about the identity. You had the storybook season, you had the interception of Jared Goff, the 2 starts, and the scholarship, and all these really fun moments, and plenty of time left. And so once you realize, oh my gosh, like, I'm not a football player anymore, I can't be Gabe Ovgard, the Oregon State safety. What helped, or maybe what did you realize about yourself that, I really needed something else to look for? But what helped or hurt in that time period where you needed to look to something else to define you?
Yeah. I would love to say, as a believer in Jesus, I would love to say that I looked to him and that it was great, and that I found my identity in him. But the truth is, I had a theology that kind of told me God was there to give me all the good things, give me all the blessings, and just make my life easy and comfortable and fun. And so when I stopped, I was like, well, what the heck? This isn't fun. Like, this isn't bettering me. This doesn't seem to be in my best interest. And so I wrestled a lot, I think, with God, and just the fact that he would take away a good gift like that from me. And so, yeah, it wasn't until later that I kind of had this realization of my faith and who God was, and how Christians just are supposed to be the best in terms of living into their suffering through Christ. And so I would love to say that I did that well then, but I didn't. And so what I did look to, I think, was, it's hard to say, like, I didn't look to a lot. And I remember I just kind of shrunk back, and I felt like an outsider on the football team. I felt like an outsider outside of the football world. I remember there would be days my roommates came home from practice at noon, and I was just waking up. And so that took a toll on me. It's like, I'm kind of a piece of crap, was like the feeling of like, dang, I haven't done anything, and these guys have already gotten a workout, practice, and a class in. And so I don't know if I refilled or filled my identity with anything else after that. I just kind of floated for a while there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you. It's hard to make that transition, to go from a spot of being pretty fulfilled in the dream that you had, and so to lose out on that is going to throw you for a loop. And there may even be a positive of realizing what it feels like, because a lot of people can fill their life with some decent things, but it almost might help to really have a high and completely lose it, to know what it feels like to not have that depravity of sorts. And to speak to your point of, no matter what anyone's religious beliefs are, to think of any sort of deity as being a cosmic vending machine of they're in it to give me what I want, that belief is never going to work, right? It's always going to fall apart.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much suffering in the world, and you look at, people in third world countries, Asia, Africa, and they're starving every day. And it's like, well, God's still with them. So we're not exempt here in America. And this is a lesson that I've been learning. It's like, I'm not exempt from this stuff. I'm definitely blessed.
In your trajectory, then going further from that, there were a couple other big life events. You went overseas and studied for a while in Europe, and you got married, and you started working at Nike and whatever else there is that's happened in your life since then. So there's some big things that have come in. How has, on the same theme of how happy and, emotionally content you were as you're going through these other big life events, where did those fit into that arc in your life? Did they come as a result of becoming happy, or, more stable, and then you were able to experience these things? Did those things cause a certain level of happiness, fulfillment? How did those come about the last couple of years?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think they probably fulfilled some of that happiness. In a lot of ways that they shouldn't have, and that they weren't meant to. Thinking back just on the identity question, as that school year went on and I got my internship at Nike, I definitely started to place my identity in Nike, in the swoosh. And it was like, oh, I'm a Nike guy now. I'm a Nike lifer. I'm going to work at Nike, all this stuff. And so the next school year, it was Nike or bust. And then I did my term abroad, and I planned to come back and get a job at Nike. And so then the study abroad came, and I thought that was going to be, I thought it was going to be just this time of pure bliss and happiness. And I watched Rick Steves' Europe, and the way he presents Europe is just so amazing and awesome. And so I expected to be Rick Steves over there. And then I went there, and I was pretty much alone. A friend came with me for the first 2 months. Then after that, he left, and I was alone there. I was an outsider, and I kind of fell back into that place of depression. I didn't know how to travel. I didn't know how to make friends. And so I sat in my studio apartment pretty much the last 2 months, except for when Rylee came out and my family came out. And so I had looked to it as a source of potential happiness, and it definitely fell flat in that front. Yeah.
Have you had similar difficulties in marriage? Can also become its own crux of, I expect my wife or my husband to make me happy, and they're my fulfillment, they're my other half. And the phrase "you complete me" sounds really nice, and it is. It's a very affirming phrase, but it could also be dangerous, because what happens when things don't go well, and then the person you expect to complete you, then you're having friction or an argument or whatever it may be. So has that been difficult to, I'm sure Rylee, I haven't met her personally, I'm sure she's great and very easy to become, enamored with and maybe put your identity with. So has that been a trap for you sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. Rylee was definitely something I looked to as a source of happiness and a source of something to ease all the pain and to kind of put my identity in. And I had a lot of expectations, and she'll tell you the same thing. Like, the expectations I had for her were pretty crazy. And then, we got married, and it's still like breaking down those expectations and like putting her in her proper place, in relation to the God I serve and all that stuff. And so, and I did that with work as well. I thought, okay, I'm at Nike, and this is going to be it for me. And I had all these expectations of what that would be like. And just like everything else, that fell flat when it's out of its proper place. And so I think one of the main lessons that God has taught me the last few years is that anything that I put my hope or happiness or trust in that's not him falls flat. And so it's been a learning process. It's been hard at times, but I think I'm finally getting it.
That's good to hear. And the nice thing is, theoretically, you've got a long ways ahead of you. You're not even to 1 year of marriage yet. So the things you're working through are good,
Yes.
and good to work through early. Like you said, you'll hit your 1 year anniversary next month, I guess, right?
Yep.
And so yeah, definitely you're ahead of the schedule in a lot of ways. Was there a moment in these first 11 months or so of marriage where it kind of hit you, oh, I was putting way too much expectations on Rylee, or I thought it would be like this, and I can't expect her to be this person, and you kind of had to take a step back? Was there a specific story or moment you remember that kind of hitting you?
Yeah, I would say it actually came before in our engagement, late in our engagement. I was meeting with a mentor of mine named Ben, and he had really poured into me this last year and a half since I got to Beaverton. And I was meeting with him, just talking about Rylee and the ways that we were struggling and all this stuff. And he's like, no matter what she does, no matter how she acts, no matter what her attitude is that day, it's your job to love her and to treat her well, and to like a big Christian, biblical thing is to love your wife like Christ loves the church. And what did Christ do for the church? He gave his life up for it. And so he kind of brought this new perspective to me of like, no matter how she acts towards me, it's my job to give my life up to her. And that was tough to hear, and it's tough to learn, and it's tough to do. But little by little, I think, and I hope I'm getting better at it. And have Rylee, she's so amazing. She makes it easy. So yeah, that's a blessing.
That's awesome. It'll be fun to see, all the lessons that you learn, and a lot of, friends our age. I officiated my first wedding this past weekend, and a friend of mine got married, and it just hit me like, oh my gosh, like the commitment, and to say the phrase, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Like I was more nervous than anyone else in the room, either of them getting married. I was so scared, but I mean, the lessons you learn and the process that you're going through personally, and there's nothing like that. It'll change you as a person for sure. A quick interruption of this interview to let you know about a future project that I think you'll like if you're listening to this podcast. You may have noticed that I've gotten several baseball players from the 2018 Beaver baseball squad on this podcast. I've also gotten several interviews that I've not even released on this podcast that'll be exclusively for a future project. It'll be a multi-part series documenting that 2018 championship squad. This audio documentary will give you a behind-the-scenes look, including stories you may not have heard and recollections firsthand from some key moments right there in Omaha.
And I got 2 strikes on me. I'm nervous. I catch a glimpse at Coach Casey in the dugout. He's screaming at me. He's telling me to stay through the baseball, stay through the baseball. I took a really, really deep breath, and I was able to get it down to one thought, and it was always, I'm a beast. I'm a beast. I would connect to my breath. I would find my focal point, and I'd said, I'm a beast. Stay through this pitch. And he threw the same exact pitch, and I caught full barrel on it.
You'll hear stories like those and how they fit together through the 2018 postseason on this multi-part series documenting that 2018 Beaver baseball team. There will also be some documentaries narrating moments from other Beaver sports to come afterwards, but stay tuned for updates right here on the Beaver Tales podcast on a release date and other info. All right, back to the interview. Couple last things for you. Tell me a little bit more. We've talked briefly about Nike, but what does your kind of day-to-day job look like? What's something that you're passionate about and what you're doing for Nike right now?
Yeah, so day-to-day, I'm a Nike expert on demand, which essentially means I'm a chat agent. So part of the membership benefits of the Nike app is to have an expert on demand ready to answer your questions about sport, product, styling, anything, even stuff like returns. So our unofficial slogan is real athletes, real answers. And day to day, I'm just trying to give Nike consumers great service and help them find the right gear for whatever sport or activity they're doing. As far as what I'm passionate about, my degree was in marketing. My internship was in football sports marketing with Nike. And that's definitely a field that I'm looking to get more into as I look to grow my career and stuff. And so I'm definitely hoping for that next marketing opportunity.
I remember chatting with some different Nike people from Oregon State, and there's a fair amount. I remember talking with Mike Hass years ago, I think Justin Cahood, and there's probably a lot. How many Oregon State football players or other student athletes have you been able to interact with at Nike?
Yeah, I want to say I've met with close to all of them.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're great. They're super helpful and just open to meeting up and kind of making a community there. So that's been a really great part of the company for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Last thing, since I mentioned the interception, I remember being down there in Berkeley and seeing you on a wheel route to Bryce Treggs, and Jared Goff kind of underthrows it a little bit and you cut off the route and pick it off. What was the story on the interception? I want to say you like maybe another defensive back told you, what to look for and helped you out. What's your memory like right before that play happened and then actually getting your first career interception?
Yeah. So I ran out there pretty excited. That week I think I had a dream that I got an interception, which was kind of cool. But
wow.
I ran out there super excited, ready to go. We were in quarters, and Treston Decoud was at corner on my side, and he says, hey, watch the, I think he said screen and go or something like that, hitch and go. And so I was kind of tipped off to it because, he's a film guy. He watched film. So gave the new guy a little tip there. And sure enough, Jared Goff pump fakes the wheel route and the guy runs it. And I was there on the hash ready to snatch it. And then afterwards.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Afterwards, I came down, threw the ball to the ref, which I should have kept it. Kind of regret that. But, and then I just got swarmed. I remember Brandon Arnold was one of the first guys up there, and then the rest of the team just started running with me, and I was just streaking across the field, kind of out of my mind. Couldn't believe what happened. So it was great memory.
Do you still watch LA Rams games every once in a while and think, I picked that guy off though? Absolutely.
But to be honest, I don't have to really say that I picked off Jared Goff anymore. I think everyone does it for me. I'll be out in public with friends and stuff, and they'll say, this guy picked off Jared Goff. And I'm just kind of over there hiding my face a little bit. But people are great about it.
Is there something that you would say? I mean, that's an easy one to point out of like, that was the pinnacle of the career. But sometimes players would be like, I know that's what everyone points to, but I'm more proud about this moment. Is there another play that maybe you went under the radar, but you're more proud of?
Yeah, I would say earlier that game even, I was on punt and they punted it and I got blocked and actually fell down on the ground. And then I got back up and ended up making the tackle on the play. And so that was big for me because I felt like there was a lot of persistence and perseverance there. And Yeah, that's a special play for sure.
All right, next time I introduce you, I'll say Gabe Ovgard, the guy that made a tackle against California on punt block coverage, and everyone will be impressed. That's the better one.
Yeah, there you go.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for your time, Gabe. It's been really fun to catch up, hear your thoughts, and you've got a pretty great story of what it means to lose a lot and to come back and to find some way to fight through it and to find a lot of brightness in that. So thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Go Beavs.
Really tremendous to hear from Gabe Ovgard and his story of what it meant to go from being a big-time football player at a Pac-12 school and earning a scholarship to losing out on pretty much everything that he found his validation and his identity in. And you got to search for something else to fill that void. And it did not go well for him for a little while. He's in a much better place now. And at 24 years old, he's growing in that. And it's fun to hear his side of the story. And I bet he'll have a lot of growth moments and things learned from not even a year in marriage yet, and a lot of life ahead of him. So best of luck to Gabe and everything ahead of him in his marriage with Rylee, his work with Nike, and whatever else may come in his future. I think he's got a lot of bright things ahead of him. Once again, if you want to check out the Beaver Tales documentaries, hear about some significant moments in Oregon State history and relive them through the eyes of the people that made them happen, that's the project I'm working on, the first season on the Oregon State baseball team in 2018. To learn more, click the link in the description of this episode. You can subscribe for some email updates and listen to that project when it comes out, probably at the end of this year, January. I'll release that in a few months from now. All right, thanks for tuning in to the Beaver Tales podcast, everybody. Until a few days from now, when you listen to the next episode, good night and go Beavs.